So before I get started, I want to mention that leading up to this video, I've been getting a lot of comments from some people saying that The Hunchback of Notre Dame is one of their favorite Disney movies. So for those of you who have left those comments, more power to you. But I would also advise you to strap in because this might be a rough one. Hey everyone, it's Alexander, the real Mr. Robinson. Welcome to the channel. This is my review for The Hunchback of Notre Dame, which came out in 1996, is the seventh movie in the Disney Renaissance, and is based off of the Victor Hugo book, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. The movie follows Quasimodo, who is the title character of this movie, the Hunchback of Notre Dame. He was taken in by Judge Frollo, Paris's Minister of Justice, after a gypsy woman tried to smuggle him away when he was a baby, but Frollo took the baby. The gypsy woman was killed by Frollo after being fatally kicked, and as Frollo is about to drown this infant in a well because of his deformity, the archdeacon comes out and stops him. So Frollo has no choice but to lock Quasimodo up in the towers of Notre Dame. And then years go by, Quasimodo meets a gypsy, Esmeralda, voiced by Demi Moore, who has no fear over the way Quasimodo looks, but Frollo is also hatching a plot to try to kill all the gypsies within Paris, and there's a new captain on board that has reservations about this, voiced by Kline. This is another one of those Disney movies that I watched as a kid, quite a bit. I actually have more memory of this movie than I did Pocahontas, and as a kid I liked the movie a lot. I couldn't tell you why I liked this movie, because rewatching it as an adult for this review, I wish I could either love this movie or hate this movie, because there's just so many things on opposite ends of the spectrum that it just makes it hard for me to have a real honest-to-God opinion about this movie. The stuff that's good is actually really good, sometimes even bold for a Disney movie. And yet the stuff that's bad about this movie is so terrible that it's almost insulting to the original source material. I'll start out with the positives first. Considering that the most popular movies of the Disney Renaissance were certainly more lighthearted, they had their dramatic moments, sure, but they didn't take things to an ultra dark level the way Hunchback of Notre Dame does, because there are themes in this movie about the corruption and hypocrisy in Christianity, xenophobia towards those that are different. There's just a lot of really dark stuff happening in this movie, which in a way you kind of question why Disney decided to make a movie based on such dark material. But they try to make the best of what they can with those moments. In a way, it's kind of like what Pocahontas tried to do, but whereas that movie's elements are just overall mediocre, the dark stuff here, and the attempts that this movie tries to make with keeping in line with those dark themes, is mostly effective. And I think the main element of this movie that helps these themes be as dark as they could be for a Disney movie is your villain, Frollo, voiced by Tony Jay. And Frollo is such a bastard. He is just that man who believes what he's doing is within God's best intentions. Like, he's doing this all for the good of Christianity and God himself. But he orders people to be murdered. He locks a deformed kid up into the towers of Notre Dame. He himself murders a woman at the beginning of the movie, and he has a real lust for Esmeralda, and it just makes him out to be a full-blown hypocrite. Like, there's just some serious corruption with that dude right there. And I thought there was an interesting parallel with the Archdeacon of Notre Dame, who doesn't appear in the movie a whole lot, but I think there could have been a better opportunity to have him featured to kind of help with the themes of this movie. Unfortunately, that dynamic is not truly explored as much as I think it could have. In terms of your other characters, I do like Esmeralda and Captain Phoebus, voiced by Demi Moore and Kevin Kline respectively, and I love the introduction to Captain Phoebus in this movie. He first enters Paris, seeing Esmeralda being chased by soldiers, and he just screws with these soldiers in a way where, oh, it was an accident, oh, you fell onto the mud, okay, well, I'm going to tell my horse to sit. Oh, ooh, I didn't see you there. Naughty horse, naughty. So, I just like how much of a badass this guy is. And for me, I think Esmeralda is definitely the heart of this movie. She's the one that manages to see Quasimodo for who he is. She's kind, she's generous, but she's also very tough. She has pretty good taste in who to trust and who not to trust. And I just think these two characters are probably my favorite of the whole movie. Which unfortunately means that Quasimodo, the title character of the film, is not. And if I'm going to be perfectly honest, I think Quasimodo is kinda dull. I'm not saying that he's an unlikable character, not at all. In fact, there are several times throughout this movie where you feel true sympathy for Quasimodo, and that especially comes into play whenever Frollo or even the citizens of Paris start treating him like he's not human, like he's an animal that should be caged up. You do feel sorry for Quasimodo throughout a lot of this movie. But I think when you compare him to Frollo, Captain Phoebus, and Esmeralda, Quasimodo is hands down the least interesting character of that bunch. And with that being said, I guess I'll just go right into what I didn't like about the movie, and some of the parts I flat out hated. I'll get the obvious one out of the way right now. The gargoyles. They have no reason to be in this movie at all. And with Jason Alexander voicing the main gargoyle, Hugo, it's so obvious that they are trying to recreate what Robin Williams did with the genie. But there is one main reason why Jason Alexander does not work in this movie, whereas Robin Williams worked in Aladdin. Aladdin had its own upbeat tone. Like I said in the review, it's kind of a precursor to what Shrek would become. So it has that very pop culture sensibility to it, and thus Robin Williams is allowed to act the way he does in that movie as the genie. With Hunchback of Notre Dame, this is trying to be a more serious story, but with Jason Alexander and the other two gargoyles, they are so distracting, and the only person they ever interact with is Quasimodo. So you could really cut them out of the movie, or at least minimize their roles, because there is a good idea where Quasimodo is so lonely that he's friends with inanimate objects, but they just took it way too far. And I also have to mention this. The gargoyle that Jason Alexander voices is named Hugo. One of the other gargoyles is named Victor. It's a reference to Victor Hugo, the author of the book. And in what is supposed to be an homage to the original author, I just feel like it would make him roll in his grave, because these characters are so obnoxious. And I just feel like they go completely against what this story is trying to convey. And also, I don't think this movie had any reason to be a musical, much like with Pocahontas. But again, much like with Pocahontas, there are two songs that work. The first is Topsy-Turvy, because it's a song set within the Festival of Fools, so you could just assume, okay, this is a song that they perform every year at this festival, so it's part of the actual thing. I can let that slide. It's not like somebody just randomly breaks out into song. And then the other song that works is the villain song, which fits perfectly within the film's themes, but all the other songs just don't work. Outside of Topsy-Turvy, I couldn't recall a single beat from any of those other songs. Even with the villain song, I couldn't remember it if it just played on its own. Like, it works best within context of the film. I guess the stuff that is bad, except the gargoyles, is not as terrible as I made it out to be, or at least how I'm reacting. But I think the thing that ultimately makes me frustrated with this movie is that I haven't read the original book, but I do know of the ending. And the ending to the original book is one of the most tragic and heartbreaking endings in literature. For those of you who haven't read the book, it ends with Esmeralda being hung. She is killed by the end of that book. Frollo is killed as well after Quasimodo pushes him off the edge of Notre Dame, but then Quasimodo has nothing to live for, so he just goes into hiding. And then at the end of the book, the soldiers decide to dig up Esmeralda's grave and then find the skeleton of a hunchback wrapped around her, implying that Quasimodo sought out Esmeralda's corpse and just hung on to it until he died, and both of them turned into skeletons. How messed up is that ending? And the fact that they made a Disney movie about it with musical numbers, comedic gargoyles, and a happy ending where all of Paris accepts Quasimodo for who he is, and Esmeralda and Captain Phoebus get together at the end, that's kind of insulting to the original source material. Like, that is such a drastic change that it almost taints the entire movie for me. So that's ultimately why I'm torn between loving this movie or hating this movie, because if I were to give it 2 individual ratings, the stuff that's good, I would say worth seeing in your lifetime, because again, there are some ballsy decisions that go into the darker elements of this movie. But the stuff that's bad, I would say burn in hell, just because it is such a middle finger to that original source material. And I imagine it just sends Victor Hugo rolling in his grave. But I'm going to give it 1 rating, and I guess I'd just say watch at your own risk. There is a lot to like about this movie, and it is pretty daring in some areas. But again, the stuff that's bad about this movie is so terrible and often insulting that it's really hard for me to recommend this. This is one of those movies where you're really going to have to make your own judgment on, because I can't be the one to say either you should or shouldn't. I don't personally recommend it, but hey, who's stopping you? And there you go. That's my review for The Hunchback of Notre Dame. I really am so split on this movie. Next week is going to be another Disney movie that I watched a lot as a kid, but haven't rewatched it since, and that's Hercules. I remember this movie leaving a more positive impact on me as a kid than Hunchback of Notre Dame did, but again, I haven't seen it since a kid. So it's going to be interesting to see if my opinion has held up or if it's changed completely. But now I want to know what you guys think about The Hunchback of Notre Dame. If you've seen it, what did you think? Whatever the case may be, let me know in the comments below. And until next time, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there's only one. Hello everyone, I just wanted to say thank you all for watching my review for The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell button to get notifications. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, go check out my Twitch channel, and support me on Patreon. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, have a good day and take care of yourselves.